Here we go on a Wednesday. Wheelhouse, you're listening to ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. It is Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. As we get things rolling here at the start of another Wheelhouse radio program. Jake Asman, Cody Stoots, BK Brett Kellner, and in for Andrew Carlson, the vacationing Andrew Carlson, is BMAC, Brian McDonald, producing our show. We're with you till 7. A lot to talk about. Hopefully you all had a wonderful Valentine's Day. BK, how was Bruce Springsteen?
Amazing.
Was he?
Top 5 concert I've ever been to.
Really?
He still got it. 73 years old, but played nonstop for almost 3.5 hours at Toyota Center last night. He crushed it.
The boss is still the boss.
He's still the boss. Absolutely. So, hell of a night at the launch pad.
Cody, how was your date on Mother's Day? Or Mother's Day, on Valentine's Day? You had a date with your mom, which is the confusion.
Took Mama Stoots out to eat, and listener Adrian was our waiter.
No way.
Yeah.
Did he hook you up?
I mean, it's great service.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a hookup.
Good recommendations on the menu.
He's a fan of the show?
Yeah, big fan.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah, big fan.
Did you say, yo, Adrian, at any point in the night?
Yo, Adrian.
After I was done paying, because they give you the little things that pay at the table, I was like, yo, Adrian, I did it!
It's the lowest hanging fruit, but
Yeah.
it has to be picked.
Of course.
It has to be said.
Mm-hmm.
We start today with some, I would say, significant news from DJ Bieneme, the Texans reporter for ESPN. He wrote a story today, and the headline, "What will the Houston Texans do to fix struggling QB position?" In the story, he goes through a bunch of different scenarios where the Texans could go free agency, obviously the draft. This is the big takeaway, though, from the story. Quote, according to league sources familiar with the Texans interview process, the front office in Houston told coaching candidates it plans on using the number 2 overall pick on a quarterback. Cody, you and I talked about the scenario yesterday. Well, what happens if they don't like any of these quarterbacks and they say, we're going to wait till 2024 to get our guy. We're going to rebuild our roster in the meantime. Based on this, certainly doesn't sound like that's the thinking at this given point in time.
That was my hope for the interview process. We talked about what you want to tell these head coaches, what you want out of the interview process. One of my hopes was that management, the ownership, like Cal McNair and Hannah McNair and Janice and everybody involved from the ownership side and Nick Caserio were telling these coaches, we're getting a quarterback. And we're going to get a quarterback with the first selection that we have in the 2023 NFL Draft. That was one of my biggest hopes. I mean, the Texans are checking a lot of boxes here in the offseason for me. Legitimate coaching search with legitimate candidates. They ended up with my favorite candidate in the coaching search. And now we're finding out here that in the coaching search, one of the things we hoped, at least very much I hoped, to be one of the aspects of this job. Look, if you're taking this job, you're coaching a quarterback that we draft at number 2 overall. Like that has seemingly been one of the aspects of taking this job and being the head coach is you're going to coach a quarterback that we're using the number 2 overall pick on.
I know DeMeco Ryans is a defensive guy, but he's not taking this job if he didn't get that from this ownership group and if he didn't get that from Nick Caserio. He needed that verification that the Texans were going to draft a quarterback with that number 2 overall pick. You're not landing a candidate as highly coveted as DeMeco Ryans if you don't have a plan for the most important position in the sport. Think about the last game DeMeco Ryans coached. He lost his quarterback. He had some Scorbini out there, and his team got crushed by Philadelphia, okay? It didn't matter how good his defense was. It's not like the Niners' defense played that bad, especially when that game was relatively close early on when Brock Purdy was on the field. But once the Niners' offense just got stuck in the mud with Josh Johnson out there, it didn't matter what the defense did because they couldn't win because they didn't have good quarterback play. DeMeco knows that. He's played at the highest level. He's coached at the highest level. He realizes you need a quarterback to win. So even though he's a defensive guy and you've got 2 defensive dudes at the very top of this NFL draft, he's a smart enough football mind to realize that you need a quarterback to have a chance in this league. The Texans were not getting DeMeco or really any of the top candidates that they interviewed if they didn't promise that that was what they were going to do at that spot.
So they have plans to use the number 2 pick on a quarterback. Nowhere in this story does it say they're definitely staying at number 2 to get their quarterback, though. So I still think the possibility of the Texans moving up a spot with the Bears to ensure they get the guy they want is still on the table.
Well, and that's part of the coaching process and the evaluation process is Nick Caserio and the scouts and the head coach and the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach and everybody, they go in the scouting cave and they throw on the film and they find out, hey, which of these 2 guys do we like more? How much more do we like this guy versus that guy? Okay, we like him this much more. Do we need to go to one, Nick, to get this guy? Like, do we need to make sure we need to go up there and go get Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud at number one so that somebody else doesn't go and get it? And this is different, too, from what Jim Irsay did yesterday, because the long-held belief and the thought was the Texans are taking a quarterback. Like, it was, you were sort of on the outskirts of the way things were going if you were saying the Texans weren't going quarterback. So the Texans were totally comfortable with 7 guys not being the head coach of this organization and knowing and telling whoever they talk to that, yeah, they're going quarterback. Because when I was in the meeting with them, they told me they're going quarterback. And, oh, by the way, one of those guys is the head coach in Indianapolis now, who is the 4th overall pick. One of those guys is the head coach in Arizona now, is the 3rd overall pick. It's like, yeah, you're tipping your hand, but you also only have one team in front of you, and there's at least 2 quarterbacks at the top. So this is different than Irsay sitting at 4 saying, I like that Alabama guy.
Yeah.
And we got to get a young quarterback.
Did you see what he tweeted today?
Oh, my goodness.
Jim Irsay, you got to tip your cap.
He's in troll mode. It was good.
This was incredible. He tweeted, my relationship with the Chicago Bears goes back more than 60 years. And it's a picture of him on a bear at the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago.
No, he did not.
He did. So he's now fully all in on trolling the NFL community.
Awesome.
I didn't know they let you ride bears when you were a youth back then.
He's old.
Hey, back in the 70s, times were different.
Yeah.
They'd do anything to make a buck back in the 70s.
You think it's 70s?
60s, 70s.
I think we're going back further than that.
Can I go to the Houston Zoo and sign up for a bear ride?
I don't know if the Bears want you on them.
That's a good point.
Sorry, that was a fat joke for those
Good
asking.
point. It's a fat fact.
Yeah.
It's a fat fact.
Yeah.
So I loved hearing this. I loved reading this. It was the 9th paragraph in DJ's story, and I was like, what are we doing
This
here?
is the lead, DJ. I know you're new to ESPN, but that's the big story
We
here.
got this thing buried, the 9th paragraph in this story.
I mean, I like DJ. We've had him on the show before. DJ is writing about like a bunch of different scenarios, including like the pipe dream of like the Texans going out there and getting Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson. And the biggest story, the biggest takeaway from this article is you got a source telling you they're telling people they're taking a quarterback in the first round at the 2nd pick of the draft.
They told 8 guys, we're taking a quarterback at number 2. And if we need to get in the building and take a guy at number 1, we got the draft ammunition to go get it. Like that to me is a big story. So we can stop texters and callers and tweeters. We can stop with Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. You can create your Madden trade scenario where the Texans trade for number 3 and get one of those guys, but they're taking a QB with one of those top 2 picks. Like, that's happening. We've been telling you it's happening. That's happening. And we were hoping that was an element of the job interview process, and it seems like it indeed was an element of talking to the Houston Texans about being their head coach. And I wonder if there's a candidate or two that was like, actually not in love with that idea. And maybe that's why they didn't get a second interview, or they didn't get further in the process, or the Texans didn't like that guy or that person's response to that. And I'm fine telegraphing this because there's not a laundry list of teams in front of you, and there is 2 quarterback prospects.
Well, you're getting one of the quarterbacks. There's 2 consensus top guys, whether it's Young or Stroud. You're getting at least one of them. So there's nothing wrong with telling prospective coaches it's our intention to find our long-term answer at the quarterback spot.
Common sense prevails, fellas. There hasn't been nearly enough common sense around these parts over the last few years, and this is a common sense decision that the Texans are making. You need a quarterback, you draft a quarterback. I talk about it all the time. Like, the greatest financial advantage in American professional sports is having a quarterback on a rookie contract, okay? So you're not in a spot, and it doesn't make sense for you to go pay $35 million or more per year to Derek Carr, or pay $25 to $30 or whatever the hell it's going to cost for Jimmy G. Like, you lose that advantage, and those guys aren't that good. So go try to get a stud quarterback and get him on that rookie contract. That is what other teams do. That is how teams have success in this league. You look at Kansas City. That's how they were able to build what they built up there. Like, find the guy and build around him. This is a common sense decision made by the Houston Texans, and it's good because they've been severely lacking those.
Take your swing when you can see when it is your turn in the order. The Texans are really close to being in the batter's box. Take your swing. Take your swing.
What was BK's poem yesterday for Valentine's Day? Roses are red, violets are blue. Texans need a quarterback at 2.
Something like that.
Was that the poem? Or did I just come up with that on the spot?
It was a bit more elegant than the way you just described it, but yeah, it was something along those lines.
Well, it still stands. A day later, they still need a quarterback.
The roses are still red. The violets are still blue. The Houston Texans are still drafting QB at number 2.
There you go. Here's what it actually was. I just pulled it up. Roses are red, violets are blue. The Texans must take a quarterback with pick number 2.
There you go.
All right.
That's where we're at right now. And by the way, for those of you who are planning to hashtag run it back with Davis Mills again, I encourage you to go to HoustonTexans.com right now. They've got a big banner on the homepage. That's an advertisement for 2023 season tickets.
A what?
And on that banner, there's a picture of 8 current Texans players. Now, who's not in that picture? Be Davis Mills.
Wow, they included Driscoll and not Mills?
They did not include Driscoll.
Oh.
No. You've got Pierce, you've got Stingley, Petrie, Harris, Green, Collins, Tunsil, and Jerry Hughes. Davis Mills, not part of the future plans for this organization.
They should have put D'Amico in this ad somewhere.
When
He
you-
should have been in the front.
Yeah, you're probably right. When you have a quarterback that you believe in, that you think is going to be your team's quarterback for next year, at least next season, because last year Davis Mills was in some of this stuff. He's not in it this year. There's no intentions for this organization to run it back with Davis Mills. Cody, you talk about it all the time. D'Amico won't even call Davis by his name. Oh, yeah, we got a quarterback on the roster. He hasn't even mentioned Davis Mills by name yet. They ain't running it back with that dude. D'Amico's not taking this job if the plan was for Davis Mills to be the dude for another year so you can maybe go get somebody in next year's draft. Sorry about that.
Have you guys seen the video that the Cardinals put out of Jonathan Gannon in the building? He'd finished his introductory and signing some paperwork, and he was walking out, and someone's like, hey, coach, Kyler's in the weight room. And Gannon did like this weird like power walk kind of jog to like go to the weight room.
Yeah, like he's in that State Farm commercial with Chris Paul.
Yeah, I'd see Kyler, and then the Cardinals, I'm sure, thought that it was awesome. I think it looked corny as hell. It looked dumb. D'Amico Ryans doesn't care if Davis Mills is working out at the facility. Like, hey, D'Amico, you got a guy working out in the weight room. Who is it? Davis Mills. Is that like a trainer or something? Who's the guy in the weight room? I think you call him the quarterback on the roster. It's like, all right, cool. Tell him to keep working. We're gonna need somebody to hold the footballs. Pretend to be the center when the starter's taking the snaps.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, hit the like button down below, and of course, subscribe to my channel. And if you're a Houston sports fan, listen to ESPN Houston 97.5 FM or 92.5 FM weekdays from 3 to 7 every afternoon.